Hey, everybody. This is Max Hill from Lehman College, and you are listening to the Built in the Bronx podcast, the show that connects tech companies that are looking to hire with our computer science students right here at Lehman College. Today, we're really excited to be speaking with Cavan Klinsky, Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of Healthie, a health tech company. Cavan, thank you for coming on the show. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Wonderful, wonderful. So tell us a little bit about Healthy and your origin story.
Yeah. So Healthy today builds underlying infrastructure for digital healthcare companies. So we're an electronic health record, patient engagement, and scheduling platform, all available via an API and fully brandable interfaces. And that enables our customers, which are generally kind of organizations that deliver care, to really focus on what they're good at, which is spending time with patients, and less on what they're less good at, which is reinventing the tech wheel. So we work with everybody from unicorn digital healthcare startups to two founders in a venture studio to the hospital for special surgery here in New York to kind of individual private practice owners, all really with that same focus of people who want to build really, really strong relationships with their patients and run their businesses efficiently. So that's what we do today. But I think like any startup, that's not exactly where we started. Healthy's 8 years old. I met my co-founder when I was an undergrad in college in Philadelphia at an entrepreneurship event. And where we got started was really with this kind of hypothesis or question that we wanted to ask, which was 65% of Americans are overweight or obese. There's a whole group of people clinically trained to help them. Why is no one seeing a registered dietitian? And when we really dove into it, what we realized was that dietitians didn't have the tools they needed to deliver the type of care they wanted to deliver and run their business in an efficient way. And then fast forward over 8 years and a lot of ups and downs, it turns out that we're seeing more and more people want to offer virtual care, want to build really, really strong relationships with their patients. And to do so, they need really strong tech. But that's not their built-in skill set, and it's not a good use of their time to focus on. So that's really what Healthy aims to solve.
That's incredible. I know here in the Bronx, I think among the New York City boroughs, I think 1 in 4 adults in the Bronx is considered obese, and almost half, like 45%, report doing like no physical activity. So yeah, lots of, I think, opportunity here to promote a healthy lifestyle, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's great, both from like, like a personal moral level, but also, and I think with our healthcare system, it all needs to come down to financials too. And it makes a ton of sense from a financial level, right? Like it's preventative care is so much cheaper, right, than treating people once they're in an ER or once they're in an operating room. And it's better for insurers. It's better for the patients. It's really better for everybody involved. And that's why being able to deliver care in an efficient way and really keep patients engaged into it is so important. So yeah, I think that's definitely, it's true in the Bronx, it's true everywhere. And it's been cool to see more and more people get on board with that idea.
Yeah, definitely. And tell us how Healthy has evolved over the years, and what are some milestones that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah. So Healthy started effectively as patient engagement software for dietitians. So super lightweight at the time. Nobody was really building in that space. We built out our first MVP over like a month and a half over my Christmas break, or maybe a little less, and launched with that. So hit market very quickly. So I'd say, major milestones, meeting my co-founder, huge milestone. I wouldn't ever recommend starting a business with somebody you just met, but we've been at this for 8 years and it's worked out well for, I think in hindsight, really interesting reasons. Two was kind of getting that first product launched and kind of getting the first users on it, and really also valuably kind of making that first sale, right? Like when you're building a company, people want to be nice to you. They'll tell you they want to use you, right? They'll tell you it's a great idea, right? Like that's a polite thing to do. Where you start to see people fall off is when you ask them to actually put a credit card down and pay for things. So the first time we had somebody do that was a really big milestone. From there, we expanded. We did an accelerator program that summer, which is a milestone. Hiring our first employee was a really cool milestone that summer. And then, just fast forward a bunch of time, we had really incredible growth. We didn't focus enough on product. We hired, way too many sales and marketing people that we didn't really know what to do with as part of like this VC, like blitz scale idea. And this isn't a milestone I'm proud of at all, because it's like a huge mistake by myself and my co-founder. But one, I'd say one of the most important milestones in the company was about 2 years in, we had to do a large round of layoffs. We fired almost that entire sales and marketing team and ended up basically going through this nightmarish 4-month stretch where we rebuilt the product from scratch. So not proud, but an important one. But then kind of getting that product out and truly from there building a really strong foundation where we've been able to grow in the business we are today. So yeah, I think those are some of like the major initial milestones, and it's cool to see over time going from like, selling individual software to mom and pop dietitians, which is still, a decent amount of what we do, to kind of this enterprise grade software today serving, 13,000 providers, millions and millions of patient lives, all in this kind of really efficient, really tech forward type way.
Yeah. You mentioned not starting a business with someone that you just met, right?
Yeah.
Which I think in general, for most people is good advice. But there's something about your partner that you were able to build trust with, and obviously it seems like it's worked out many years later. So when you were evaluating whether or not to go into business with your partner, what were some of the things that, this is always interesting to me.
Yeah.
I think it'll be interesting to our students as well.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I met my business partner at an entrepreneurship event, and there was like a stereotype or running joke kind of at the college I was at where MBAs, she was getting her MBA, were looking for basically people who knew how to code to build the next Facebook and pay them in pizza. And honestly, I had free time. I was like, a little bored, and I'm like, so we meet at this thing, and after she's like, hey, I have this an idea for a company. Can I talk to you about it? I mentioned I knew how to program, and I thought honestly I would get a really, really funny story out of it, where it's like, haha, like look at this like out of touch MBA trying to exploit computer science students. So I go to like, we get coffee. She's a little late. I almost leave. Like so it truly started as like no expectations whatsoever. And then she sits down, and instead of it being this like inane, like Facebook for dog type idea, I think there were really, two big pieces, or overall 3 pieces that I think really sold me on at least putting kind of a few weeks in on building this project. One was she had clearly done so much research, right? Like she came in, she knew about the sector. She had been talking to all these people. Like she didn't have the deep-seated technical knowledge, but she had really put in the work, put in the effort. This was not like, hey, like let's just offload stuff to somebody else, and really had a clear picture on kind of like where the problems were in the space. 2, there was a very clear path for the business to make greater than $0. Like for the reason I mentioned, that was a big thing to me. I'd spent a lot of time on personal projects, or I like freelance for a bunch of like startups and small businesses that had really interesting product ideas, but like have been around for a while and hadn't ever really monetized. That's such an important thing for value. And the third thing she did was, from like, without me asking, from literally day 0, it's like, hey, like this is a 50-50 partnership, right? It's not 51-49, it's not 70-30, even though like a lot of the ideas were initially hers. So I think those are the 3 big things. And then the reality of the situation was, this has turned into like, at this point, my whole life's career and like a huge thing for me, but it didn't feel that big at the time. So it's kind of like a trickle truth where it starts as a few week project, and then keeps on going. But I would say overall, like those are really the 3 core things why I decided to put in the work initially.
That's an incredible, inspiring story for sure. You mentioned amongst the milestones, hiring your first employee, which I'm sure that must have been a really exciting time.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your hiring process. What do you look for? Do you look for skills first? Do you look for character first?
Yeah. So it's very different now than it was back then. Like now we have an in-house recruiter, and there's a structured interview process, and there's questions we ask at every interview, and there's like, you're going to meet these people this time, and there's a take-home test, and there's all these like, so very different today. But when we made that first hire, I had never hired anybody before, right? I dropped out of college to do this. I never had like a full-time software engineering job at like a larger engineering company. So a lot of it was, and we also had almost no money, right? Like brand new startup raised a tiny bit of money for the accelerator, but was not a lot. So I think we were really looking for somebody who could come in, who, knew and seemed to know enough about the work that they could really contribute from day one, and ultimately was open and excited about kind of working in a startup environment, right? Where like they'd be able to roll with, frankly, a level of disorganization or kind of not knowing where things are headed that like would never happen at a company Healthie size, or even a company that's, even greater than 5 people. So, and third, and completely pragmatically, is somebody who was able to was excited to kind of join and start and be paid less than they would be if they were working at Google or anything like that, right? And just because like financially, like that was a reality. So, so that really meant that we were hiring people as their first time dev jobs. We hired people out of boot camps. Our first hire was an iOS dev from Queens who got to a boot camp that's now called Tech Talent Pipeline. And she ended up being really, really good. And we ended up hiring kind of all these I think really fantastic people who it's been so cool on a personal level, seeing their careers grow, and some of them are still here, or some of them have gone on to do really cool things, other companies. And that's why, I mean, hiring junior devs is really, really fun because you get to kind of see that very intense career progression in a short amount of time. Fast forward to today, we're smarter, we're wiser, we're in a better place from a resource perspective. I mean, at a high level, it depends on the role, but generally you're looking for somebody who has done similar work before, has a similar skill set, can really talk about kind of the work that they're doing in a way that like they clearly understand the skills that they have worked on or say they know, right? And then three, and almost more important than the skill set, is a fit kind of at the company. So like one of our big mantras is like, we don't hire assholes. And that both literally means no assholes. Like we fire people for being rude to other employees and stuff before, even if they were good at their job. But really we want people who care a lot about kind of the customer base we serve, about the work we do, about their coworkers. So it's really finding that balance of really smart people and really good people with the skill set to be able to contribute on the job. And that's ultimately what we look for. Obviously those bars are going to be different if we're hiring for somebody, a staff engineer with 20 years of experience versus a junior role. But I think really that's, and like the exact specifics vary there, but that's really overall at a high level what we look for.
Yeah, I agree with the no asshole rule because no matter how good they are, a lot of times they're more trouble than they're worth.
Yeah.
So we're going to tackle some questions from our students, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I listened to some previous podcasts that you've done. Some of our students have listened to previous podcasts that you've done. Many of our computer science students here are avid gamers, right? And I know that at some point you were. So tell us about, what are some of your favorite video games?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think so. Definitely play a lot of video games. Still play a little bit, but I think less than overall. I'd like to. But no, I mean, I think biggest games in my life. I mean, growing up, a lot of sports games like Madden, MLB The Show. When I got more into computers, part of what got me to programming was Minecraft. I was an 8th grader. It was still in very much beta. So you had like the developer was posting these weekly blog updates, a pretty intensive like technical discussion about the work he was doing, which I got really interested in. And you had this ability to like make mods. So that got me down the path of learning Java and trying to write code. Never totally figured that out, but that was a good opportunity there. A lot of League of Legends in high school. That was probably like a lot of StarCraft. So those are a lot of like, and now these days, like mostly strategy games on airplanes, like Crusader Kings, Rome Total War, stuff like that.
Very cool. Very cool. What's a common mistake that you see when young people are trying to network with or connect with someone in a leadership position?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the biggest mistake people make is not putting themselves out there, right? So like it's one of those things where there's no silver bullets in general. There's like definitely no silver bullets in networking. But I think about how I met my co-founder. I went to this random event that like I did not go there to meet a co-founder, did not go there to start a business. I just kind of showed up. Right. And showing up is half the battle. And like, even if you're going to go and you're kind of going to stand in a corner and like not talk to a lot of people, that is so much better, right, for your ability to network, for your ability to have this kind of serendipitous meeting than to not show up. Right. So like the biggest thing is show up, like go to the event, send the email, put yourself out there, et cetera, and just kind of like do that initial work. And then what's going to happen is, you'll get feedback. You'll see kind of where you are getting positive feedback from people you're talking to, right? In cases where you may not be, or it's not the right way. And like, that'll help you kind of tune, I think everybody networks a little differently, and you should network in a way that feels personal to you, because otherwise you can come off very fake or like artificial, which isn't great. But the more you do it, the more you'll learn about yourself, the more you learn about what works for you, and ultimately the better you'll get. So like the biggest mistake people make is just not putting themselves out there.
Yeah. I think when I look back to my career, I thought when I first started, I thought my work is good enough to speak for itself. And it never is, unless you're Elon Musk, or
and even, I mean, Elon Musk is like the ultimate promoter. I mean, like, and that's part of why he's able to keep the balls long enough in the air to actually build real things. And no, but I mean, it works. Like we just brought on an intern who sent me a cold email a while ago unannounced saying, hey, here's my situation. I'm taking a gap here. I'm looking for an internship. I looked at it, kind of noted in the back of my head. I don't even think I sent a response at the time. 3 weeks later, I'm talking to our VP of engineering, who's like, hey, yeah, we actually would love a little more capacity here, like maybe an intern. I'm like, oh, like I have the person, because he reached out directly. It was a personalized email, like it wasn't some spam thing. And, even though it doesn't work immediately or doesn't even respond, it kind of puts you out there in the ether where I think really positive things can happen.
Yeah. I mean, with LinkedIn and Handshake and
Yeah.
all of these different platforms,
Yeah.
it's never been easier to connect, I think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we definitely try to train our students up on those skills, definitely.
Yeah.
Are there any books, personal or professional, that you would recommend any intern that you were looking to hire read?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So it's one of those things where, like, I read a fair amount. I would say I don't read a lot of business advice books, right? So I don't read a lot of. So I would say self-help books for me were very important. I think in my like mid-teenage years, like the Dale Carnegie How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like I was a very socially awkward kid, and like I read that book, and if you're good at learning things, you can kind of apply a lot of that stuff, right? And then in startups, Lean Startup, 0 to 1, the Peter Thiel book. Like, so when I was first starting, I read a lot of kind of more like business heavy or direct books. I would say these days, I like to read a lot of stuff that I think are just really inspiring or really interesting stories. There's like oh man, I'm blanking on the answer, but like, the book about the Endurance, right, which is the ship that got stuck in the Arctic, and Ernest Shackleton basically led kind of the group of people all the way across the Arctic back to civilization. Like that's an incredibly inspiring book with some good stuff about leadership. I think a lot of interesting stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'd say at least the way I look at this, like two phases. There's one, like, can you do like do you have this handle like the basic day-to-day stuff, like the lingo, the terms, like high level history with kind of the industry you want to be in? And if that's not the case, then I would read kind of a lot of like the intro level books, or just kind of like the most recommended books in that subject. And then beyond that, at least for me, I value reading more over reading less, but maybe more educational books. So I just started choosing books that I found interesting, that I thought were cool stories or cool people.
Yeah. I think How to Win Friends and Influence People, that's a wonderful book. I mean, at any age. I remember when I was in vacation in Iceland, I saw there was like a group of women that were reading that book, and book is all over the place.
Yeah.
So again, last question for you. Startup grind this is from a student. Startup grind is not for everyone. In the early days of Healthie, when the hours and the work weeks got long and the stress was high, how did you get through it? How did you lead your team through it?
Yeah. Getting a company off the ground has a lot of cool moments, but frankly, has a lot of really, really bad, shitty moments. Hours can be really long. Resources are low. You're handling a lot of stuff that, like, you just have to do to kind of keep things going. And we had definitely had a lot of periods at Healthie where that happened. So yeah, on the not for everyone piece, I mean, I think what helps you get through it is overall, you have to really, really care about the work you're doing, right? And I think when it comes to Healthie, what helped us push through like a lot of those tough times was, one, we really love the customers we serve, and we really love the work that our customers do. I don't think if you took the time and effort and energy and just stress and frustrations that we had in our early years, and we were in fintech or like marketing technology and trying to attribute like who bought what on the internet, I don't think we'd still be doing this. Because like it's just when you're in a really meaningful space, and health tech can be a really meaningful space, you almost feel this like moral responsibility and duty like to the work you're doing that can help carry through a lot of stuff. So that's on a personal level, I think the big thing. What I've since learned, which I was not good at in the early days, is having a life outside of being a founder is so important. Like, it feels like you are your company, but you need to have that separation. So I would have been much further away from fully burning out if I had maintained like real hobbies or like a real life outside of work during a lot of those early years. The contrary to that is, well, would I then have put enough hours where we would have been able to close these gaps? And that's something I'm not sure of, and remains kind of an open question that I think about on my end. On getting people through the work on your team, I mean, you really have to have a mission and have a vision and make it clear where people are driving towards. There's like that famous quote, like, if you want to get people like to sail and go explore, don't talk to them about the boats, like talk about them, like kind of where those boats are headed, or talking to them about like the beauty of the open sea or something. Right. So that was a big piece. But I mean, the reality is it's hard. Like I mentioned, we did that 4-month like nightmarish rebuild, which was the most I've ever worked in my life. Really the only time we've ever like crunched people at Healthie. And no one on that team is still an engineer at Healthie. Like we have people moved in other departments, we have not, but it's tough. So I don't think you should ever plan to build a company that requires you to ask employees to work overly long hours for a meaningful period of time, because I don't think that part works. You can do it as a founder, I think, but I don't think it's fair to employees, and I don't think it ends up working long term.
Yeah, I think especially if they don't have a piece of it, it's really a weird thing. But yeah, balance is definitely hard.
Yeah,
I know I've dealt with burnout issues in my startup journey. And I agree with you, because you have to have some kind of life outside of it to even just distract yourself from the constant pressure, I think. So if any of our students were interested in connecting with you, what are the best platforms or ways to reach out?
The best way is to send me an email. I'm just cavan@gethealthy.com, or LinkedIn me with a personalized message. Like if you send a connection, I may or may not accept it. Like there's actually meeting and connecting with people, and then there's like hitting a connect button on a website, and they're very different things. So I would say one of those two things would be the biggest.
Yeah. So students that are listening, personalized emails on LinkedIn. Don't just send a connection request with no detail. So Cavan, thank you so much for coming on the Built in the Bronx podcast. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. Great speaking.
Definitely. And looking forward to having you come on in the future. All right.
Awesome. Thank you.